Welcome to Same Pod, Different Cast. Each week we talk about a crazy story. I'm Mel Black.
And I'm Marie White. We are a couple of moms who like listening to tales of survival, humor, and mystery, but also be around our kiddos. Parental discretion is advised.
All right, welcome to season 3.
Season 3. Sorry. For our listening audience. Yep. We just went through almost this entire story and realized Melinda didn't hit record. So welcome to season 3.
I'm so sorry. But
No, it's okay.
I didn't spoil everything for you, so
It's a good story.
It's a good story so far. Okay, but we're gonna get through it. Okay, let's just jump in. It's 1993, 1994-ish, and a man named Peter gets a call from his mother. She tells him, "You might want to come visit your Auntie Hannah. She's wondering if you would be interested in some old film that she has in a storage shed." Now, Auntie Hannah is not actually Peter's aunt. She is a neighbor that has lived 4 doors down from Peter's parents literally his whole life. And he's not expecting much, mostly because Hannah tells him that these movies were made from her husband, Colin. But Peter is still interested in taking a look because he loves all things film. So he walks out to the storage shed in her back garden, and it's there that he finds a giant chest.
I say it looks like a treasure chest, like maybe taller than that, kind of like twice the height is what I would think is a treasure chest, but it looks like the boo box from Hook.
Yeah, the boo box. Yes, absolutely. So he opens up the boo box, and there is sitting dozens of tin canisters that were protecting a bunch of 35 millimeter film, labeled with names of movies he had never heard of. Later research would find that these films were taken in the 1920s and were actually on the verge of deterioration. Peter had to know more about Hannah's husband, Colin. Although there were some journals and history books written on him, there were no film credits to him. But through looking at these films, Peter and his colleagues were able to piecemeal the life of filmmaker Colin McKenzie. Colin McKenzie was born on the 7th of February, 1888 in Geraldine, New Zealand. Colin and his younger brother Brooke helped work the family farm, but were interested in other things. His uncle owned a bicycle shop, and it was there that Colin discovered the love of mechanical invention, and he would often spend the weekends there tinkering with things. But it wasn't until the spring of 1900, when a traveling picture show came to town, that he found his passion. By the age of 12, Colin had built his own motion picture camera, and he later would attach it to a bicycle that would rotate the hand crank. So in 1901, Colin would create the first tracking shot.
You said he was 12 and he
was
built his first camera?
12.
Oh my goodness. I couldn't do anything when I was 12.
I know. He later would set up a mechanism using steam power to drive a projection system. He even made his own film using boiled flex leaves and egg whites to make the material photosensitive. Here's the problem. It took 12 eggs to make 1 minute of film. So Colin started stealing eggs. And unfortunately, got caught.
Oh, no. 2,000?
2,000 eggs. Colin's father actually destroyed all of his production equipment except for his camera in retaliation for this.
That's a little extreme, don't you think? Like, I understand punishment when punishment's due, but I mean, he was 12 and he built that thing by himself.
Yeah, I had read that he didn't really have a great relationship with his father. His father did not want him to pursue any of this. And I kind of understand that, especially in the 1920s when your goal is survival.
Yeah, you're a farmer, and obviously, probably didn't really. It doesn't. We have hindsight now, so we knew what was coming, and in the invention of film and radio,
Mm-hmm.
and to be a farmer, you're just like, I gotta pick potatoes. Like, let's just get this going.
Yeah. This didn't stop Colin from continuing his passion. Just like a man named Richard Pierce, who lived less than 50 miles from the Mackenzies. You see, Richard Pierce was determined to create a flying machine, and he had created one and had had multiple attempts to take flight. This apparently has always been scrutinized, with some believing that he took flight before the Wright brothers, but there was never proof of it until now. Colin was able to take record of this flight. Here's the problem. Colin was positioned directly in front of Richard Pierce. And so, seconds after takeoff, in order to avoid hitting Colin, Richard had to dart to the right and ultimately crashed. However, in the film, a man is seen to have a newspaper in his pocket. And with digital enhancements, they were able to determine that this film took place 9 months before the Wright brothers took their own flight. Peter assumes that the reason why they hadn't actually heard anything on it was because of how short the flight was, and mostly assumed it didn't count for some reason.
Yeah, so most people probably. I mean, obviously they didn't see it, but they were like, "Oh, he's just falling with style."
Falling with style, yeah.
Yeah.
In 1905, Colin, along with his brother Brooke, created the Mackenzie Brothers Picture Company, filming weddings and parades to generate income, but the brothers had their eyes set on more adventurous projects. They made a film called The Warrior in 1908. Or The Warrior Season, I'm sorry, The Warrior Season. And although it should have been acknowledged as the world's first feature film because it was 80 minutes long, what's more impressive is that it actually includes something that hadn't been done before. Colin had found a way to record synchronized sound. So in the film, you're able to hear gunfire, horses galloping, and even some dialogue. But here's the problem.
There's always a problem. No, like
It's always a problem.
Problem.
Everyone talking in the film is Chinese, and the invention of subtitles were not around yet. So, although people were initially fascinated about being able to hear this dialogue, when they couldn't understand what was being said, it got old fast, and most people just walked out of the theater.
I have questions.
Mm.
So, one, the length is amazing. That's actually 80 to 90 minutes is what my husband says is the perfect length for a film. So, and that's amazing considering this was in 1908. But two, you said the dialogue was in Chinese. So, did Colin or Brooke speak Chinese?
You know, I have no idea. That's a good question. I have no idea. I don't know if they were just able to like let them know, hey, this is a fight scene, so act, annoyed or something, or if they even really planned that was going to work. I have no idea. But Leonard Moulton, a famous historian, film critic, called it a fatal flaw. Colin would never attempt to do anything with sound again. He next turned his focus on the pictures themselves, focusing more on trying to make the quality of the film better. He finds a way to actually be able to develop a little bit of color and put it into the film. But in order to do that, he needs a berry that is only found in Tahiti. So off him and his brother go. And after 4 months of working on the film, they were able to develop 22 seconds of film.
4 months for 22 seconds.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But again, here's the problem. In his test run, the only 22 seconds of film to use, you can see that the film is centered on some flowers and some grass. So it's centered on that, and then a woman walks into the shot who is completely topless. Colin or Brooke, whoever is actually has the camera, tries to redirect the camera. So they swing to the left in an attempt to avoid her, but they just pan over to more women without a top on.
Oh no.
Thinking that they still had a technical breakthrough, they go back to New Zealand and try to promote this work. Here's the problem. They get arrested.
Oh no. Can I read this, please?
Yeah, you
This
can read
is
it.
not a headline you would see every day, or at least today. But it says local men arrested, smut charges brought.
So on June 9th of 1912, they are charged with exhibiting a lewd document and sentenced to 6 months hard labor.
6 months?
I know, they did real time for this.
Jeez.
It was at this time, they're back home and not doing anything, that Colin decides that he wanted to focus his attention on making a film that would send a message to people. And what better resources to look for messages than the Bible?
Okay.
He released his intentions to make a 20-minute film about the story of Salome and John the Baptist, which, if you don't know the story, here's a quick summary. Herod was the kingish of Galilee and has John the Baptist thrown in jail for reproving his divorce from his wife and shacking up with another lady. Salome, Herod's stepdaughter-ish, dances before Herod and his guest, and he drunkenly was so pleased by that he told her that he would give her anything she wished. And she says, "I want John the Baptist's head on a platter," which he reluctantly agrees and has John beheaded. And this may or may not have started an uprising. Seek your local Bible and Wikipedia for more information.
Yes.
Colin is to take the role of John the Baptist. Brooke is to take the role of a Roman soldier slash Salome's lover. And they find a woman named Mabel to play Salome. Brooke and Mabel actually fall in love and get married.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. But the film was put on pause due to World War I. Brooke enlisted, but Colin was not able to fight due to his flat feet. But Brooke actually took one of the lightweight cameras that Colin had built with him on his tour. And they said that he had focused not on battle, but on the human faces of war.
I know you said human faces, but I think all I see are legs.
Yeah, so just unfortunately, due to how like old film is, it was really hard to get a picture of their faces because the film is kind of damaged, you know. So
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get it, but if you watch the film, you can see them. Brooke unfortunately succumbs in battle on June 11th of 1914, and he was 25. Overcome by his depression and grief, Colin disappears, and he disappears for about 3 years between 1915 and 1918. After the end of the war, though, Colin returned, determined to continue his work on Salome in honor of his brother. Apparently, during that time, he would retreat into the hills where he was building a giant man-made structure, essentially a city used for the production of the film. And on February 22nd, 1919, filming commenced, with Mabel resuming her role as Salome. Here's the problem. After, I know, expected problem, right?
One, can I just say good for Mabel? Because one, love the name, love a good old lady name. But two, good for her. Like, she lost her love and she's able to still do her other love, which I'm assuming is acting.
They said that she was really, like, she really channeled her grief into the role, which I think probably is helpful.
Yeah, probably a healthy way to do it.
But unfortunately, after 5 days, Colin completely runs out of money.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So in order to create a source of income to bankroll this project, he took a job. One that you would say is a little bizarre. A man named Stan Wilson, a stage clown who dreamed of fame in silent pictures, hires Colin to film one of his vaudeville routines. It doesn't really go to plan, though. In the movie, somehow a little girl named Marjorie Hurst gets caught up in the film, and she actually ends up kicking Stan in the shin. And they actually end up getting into a little bit of a fight, with Stan, like, smacking her in the face.
This grown man
Yeah.
smacking a little girl?
Yeah.
Oh, heck nah.
Apparently, this added fight was the only thing that really made this film entertaining, but it gave Stan an idea. From then on, he would go around town doing odd things to innocent random people and have Colin film him from a suitcase camera. He would dump their luggage out, throw pies in their face, or toss them into a fountain. Like, really sad pranks.
This is like pre-candid camera.
Yeah.
Candid camera? Like,
Yeah, yes. Leonard Moulton,
gosh.
that historian and film critic I was talking about, called him pathetically unfunny. And Colin himself actually didn't enjoy this work.
I was gonna say, I hate the show Punked too, so
Yeah. I don't, yeah. This would make me cringe. It did create quite a bit of income for him, though. And in a relatively short turnaround, he could go back to working on the film. However, when he was able to start up production, it started to rain. Like a lot. As in, the most it had rained in 30 years.
Oh my gosh.
So for the time being, production was down. So while he couldn't work on Salome, he reluctantly went back to work with Stan. One day, Stan was on a train track doing what Stan does when he throws a pie into the face of a man and a woman waiting for a train, not knowing that this man was the Prime Minister of New Zealand. The Prime Minister's security quickly take all of this, like, in all of the situation, and actually start to beat the crap out of Stan.
Oh my gosh.
Like, more than necessary. But also not knowing that, like, Colin is filming this whole thing.
Two things.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous on both parts. Like, you should not throw pies in people's faces, nor should you have your bodyguards beat the bejesus out of somebody. But two, can I just comment that this is Stan the Man? Is like this the first time that is used?
I think so. Every time when I was watching the information on him, they would show a different movie. It was always Stan the Man in somewhere. Stan the Man. Yeah. So it was like him wreaking havoc on this area.
Yeah, I wonder if this is the first like iteration of Stan the Man.
Maybe. So obviously this got some traction because it had to do with the prime minister. But Stan thought it had to do with him picking up fame. And so he actually ended his relationship with Colin and moved to the US to try his luck in Hollywood.
I don't like where that's going, but
Oh. Yeah, poor Stan. I don't think he does well, but I don't know. In the meantime, Colin and Mabel actually fall in love and get married in 1926.
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Like they both loved his brother so much and
And
can like share in that.
although his personal life was picking up, he was still trying to raise funds for the film. He reaches out to a man named Rick Solomon of Majestic Lion Pictures in Hollywood and actually acquires an agreement for $100,000 to finish the film, with $25,000 sent to him as an advance in cash. And this is where I think Colin is not very good with budgeting because he spends the entire amount on one fight.
$25,000?
One fight scene, yes. And
this isn't like 1920-ish.
It's 19, and I think it had something to do with it being one of the biggest extras, like scene with extras. And so it just seemed nuts to me. That seems nuts.
Okay, thinking maybe he already has the equipment, so they're not paying for that. The film they're probably going to have to pay for. So most of that money, if it's going, how much is he paying these extras? Or how many extras are there?
Yeah, I have no idea. I maybe it has something to do with the fact that because they have to go trek up into the jungle, so they're up there so that they like pay for food and stuff. I have no idea.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But
somebody get this guy a spreadsheet.
You can make him one.
I can put it on paper. I'll be great at it.
But Colin, thinking that he doesn't really need to worry about this because Rick is rich and more money will be coming soon. Here's the problem. It is now October of 1929 and the stock market crashed. Rick Solomon lost everything.
No.
However, Colin did have some good fortune. Kind of. In that, the New Zealand Communist Party actually reached out to him saying they want to help him fund this project. The downside is that they requested a bunch of changes, like the names of characters, in order to, one, take away religious references, and two, better fit their propaganda.
It's a story from the Bible.
I know.
What are you talking about?
Colin.
Religious references.
Colin adamantly disagreed with this. And in an attempt to keep his version of the film, he would shoot the same scene 5 times. 4 times for himself and 1 time in order to appease the Communist Party.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. This obviously caused delays, and eventually the Communist Party was demanding their film. On the other side, the people who now own the assets of Rick Solomon, they were also demanding their film and actually flew to New Zealand in search of him. Colin had to race to get the last 25 shots made, and in his haste, he didn't realize that Mabel, who was at this point expecting their first child, had gone into early labor. This unfortunately led to the passing of both child and mother.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Poor Colin.
Well, this completely breaks him. I mean, understandably. Even though he had finished the film, or he had finished the filming of it, he couldn't bring himself to do anything with it. But he also didn't want anyone else to take ownership of it either. So he buries the film, and then again disappears. He pops up again in 1936 in Spain at the beginning of the Spanish Civil War. Newsreel teams flocked to the front lines to get footage of the war, and this included Colin McKenzie. It's there that he meets a young nurse named Hannah in a Red Cross tent as he was recovering from a shrapnel wound. He was twice her age, but they were both from New Zealand and they had formed a bond. They married and he left the next day for the front lines. Unfortunately, Colin's whereabouts were unknown by the end of 1937. Peter, remember Peter? He's at the beginning of the story.
At the very beginning.
He faxes and telephones every film archive, museum, reference house, anywhere they could think of, and no one had any record of Colin. But 6 months later, a Spanish film archive responds to their requests for the information, and they send them a film. And this film was sitting in that Spanish archive for 60 years, credited to a cameraman named C. McKenzie. In the film, it depicts that of a cameraman recording men in battle. And at a certain point, a soldier in front of the cameraman actually is injured. And without even thinking, Colin drops the camera and runs to help this man. But ultimately, both of them succumb to gunfire. He had filmed his own death.
What was that movie with Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert Redford?
Where yes.
That's like immediately what I thought of.
Yes.
Which is just like the saddest ending to, I mean, it's not the saddest ending to a film, but it's still really sad.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, that movie came out like 35 years ago, so no spoilers. And I can't even remember the name of the movie anyway, so.
Yeah, I can't remember either. The city hadn't been located since Colin had used it. So in 1994, Peter and his team decided to mount a search for the lost city. They knew it was in a narrow valley. However, because it was in the jungle and everything grows like crazy, they had their work cut out for them. But after weeks of searching and clearing brush, 73 miles from civilization, they find Colin McKenzie's lost city. And what's more is while there, they find an underground passage that leads to a tunnel that leads to a vault. In that vault, they find a storage room that was for the production of Salome, filled with costumes and props and even a crypt. They open it up and find hundreds of tin canisters. They had found the film of Salome. With financial support from the New Zealand Film Commission and with John O'Shea, a Doan of the New Zealand filmmakers, to oversee the editing of the film, on September 3rd of 1995, the New Zealand film and television industries gathered for the premiere of Salome, a film that was originally supposed to be 20 minutes, actually is about 3 hours long.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's a Christopher Nolan film.
Yeah. Leonard Moulton said, an unknown genius who died in obscurity and who now belongs in the pantheon of the great cinema artists and innovators. Harvey Weinstein was quoted in, "The Academy needs to recognize that Colin McKenzie is one of the greatest filmmakers of our time." And Sam Neill said that we all think we had been the pioneers of New Zealand film, but this had been made 50 years before anyone thought it was of the possibility of making a feature film. So it's really amazing to me that they were able to use this man's own records as well as historians and other filmmakers to really get a detailed understanding of his life. And it was all documented including the search for the lost city in the documentary Forgotten Silver, publicly funded by New Zealand and co-directed by none other than Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson is Peter, by the way.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on, can you go back to that previous picture before I comment on the Peter Jackson? Is that Brooke and
yes,
Colin?
So that is Colin and his brother Brooke, yeah.
Okay,
Colin.
They're very good looking.
Okay.
But two, Peter Jackson?
Yeah. So this was all happened with Peter Jackson.
No wonder he was so fascinated by this and like dug deep into it. Like, we saw old film from our grandpa that he had. Remember when we went over there and he'd taken out his old what do you call that old camera? I can't think of it, but we were watching films from when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And like that was fascinating. It was really cool to see, but I wouldn't have dug any deeper past that. But because Peter Jackson is Peter Jackson, like he was already, you said he was interested in film, but like this man is really interested in film. Yeah. This is all coming together now. But also when you were talking about the city that he built, I instantly thought of The Hobbit because you were saying this was in New Zealand. And so I wonder, I'm assuming this is pre-Hobbit, or pre-Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so this actually happened 6 years before the start of the filming of The Lord of the Rings. It actually really reminded me of the making of The Lord of the Rings, which I actually enjoy watching a little bit more than The Lord of the Rings, which I really like watching Lord of the Rings. But yeah, so the film is about an hour long, and I encourage everybody to watch it because it's really well made. Here's the problem.
Why is there always a problem, Mel? Why?
When it premiered on national television in New Zealand, it was not clarified that this documentary is actually a mockumentary.
Wait, what?
Colin McKenzie does not exist. The entire story is fictional. And you have just experienced what all of New Zealand experienced in 1995.
Okay, I know we said we recorded this once before, and well, we thought we did, and you didn't press record. We didn't get to this part, Mel.
I'm so happy we did.
What?
Yeah.
So Colin McKenzie is a complete figment of Peter Jackson's imagination?
Yep.
Why? I was so impressed. So impressed.
So you have actually seen the actor who plays the role of Colin McKenzie. So those photos you were seeing.
I was going to say, that first picture you showed me of Colin McKenzie, I literally, when I saw it, I was like, that looks like a guy, a modern guy in a, like, picture that, you know, you can get taken at, like, the fair where it looks like a vintage photo. Yeah. That's what it looked like. But who is this guy?
So he played Deagle, which is in the first scenes of Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King.
I'm so angry. Also, he looks way different here.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he has some prosthetics on.
So he actually, they showed a screening of the film to a friend of his, and he was sitting right next to her, and she did not put two and two together. She believed that the film was, she's like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating. But there was never a connection that it was actually him. So naturally, this made a lot of people very angry.
I am so mad too, and I'm not from New Zealand.
Yeah, pretty much the entire country believed it to be true. The Museum of New Zealand wanted to devote some space for artifacts to Colin Mackenzie. Film tutors had started to add Mackenzie to their curriculum. And I actually have an example. Marie, do you want to read that?
No.
No. I'll read it.
Yes.
I'll read it.
No, I'll read it. I'll read it. That's fine.
No.
Oh, I'm so mad. Okay. This was in my film studies curriculum in the first year of uni. We had a screening. We were so astonished. We never heard of Mackenzie. Come back for a seminar a day or a couple later, and only then we were informed this was a mockumentary. The professor said, "Oh, Brian, other professor, never informed you lot that this was fake." Typical Brian, LMAO. This was years ago, but man, I feel better. The whole NZ was fooled. A shame our professors never told us the story of its release, and it's really fascinating.
And people actually were really upset that it had been publicly funded. So they say in the film that the production of Salome was funded, but this documentary or mockumentary was actually publicly funded.
Okay, so where did Salome come from? Was that filmed too, like recently?
Yeah, so the entire production of the documentary was fake.
My God. All of it? Oh,
all of
my
it.
God.
The only
Mabel?
Yeah, so like
the baby?
Yeah. So they, like I said, so because they got that Sam Neill to participate in it, they got Harvey Weinstein to participate, they got Leonard Moulton to participate in it. So even the things with Richard Pierce. Now Richard Pierce was an actual person, but the recordings of him, and it was always, I guess that was true, that it was disputed that whether or not he took flight before the Wright brothers, but there was never any proof of it.
What about Stan the Man? Was he real?
Stan the Man was not real.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad the children were harmed in the making of this film, but
yeah, true. So Pentex Productions on YouTube, they made an observation that a lot of people were probably embarrassed because they had some form of confirmation bias, mostly because they really wanted it to be true.
So did Harvey Weinstein and Sam, did they know that this was a mockumentary when they're commenting on this?
They knew it was a mockumentary, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But let's go through some of the reviews, because people wrote into TVNZ, which was Television New Zealand. It was their, like, almost their PBS, So I'm going to read you some. I am astonished that you would stream this on TV. Heads will roll on Television New Zealand. I think it's bloody disgusting that TVNZ would show this appalling, deceptive program. I want to come around and put a brick through your window. And Peter Jackson and his silver screen conspirators should be shot.
Oh my goodness.
Formal complaints were filed against the broadcast station, and even though they weren't upheld, plans to rescreen the film were canceled. Peter Jackson, along with his co-writer and co-director Costa Bodas, honestly assumed that the fact that it wasn't real would somehow get out before the screening, but the secret was just really well kept.
Oh my gosh.
Forgotten Silver is still being discussed by film scholars more than a quarter of a century later.
I have no words. I'm like... What?
I know. It's a crazy. Isn't that crazy?
So, okay, hold on. Okay, so this came out before Lord of the Rings, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, did Peter Jackson have problems with getting Lord of the Rings was probably not like crowdfunded. He probably had
Right.
a what is that
There was a
called?
production company involved with that, yeah.
Yes. But did people I don't remember this because Lord of the Rings came out when we were kids and I remember going to see it, but did people not want to go see it because they were so angry about this?
I imagine, honestly, I kind of feel like he's obviously from New Zealand and he loves New Zealand, but part of me feel like, did you film that in New Zealand to try to get some popularity back?
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe because that did he have to build Hobbiton or was that already there?
So he built Hobbiton, and they had for the first set of films, so for the Lord of the Rings, they had to put everything back. But when they went to go back for the Hobbit, they made it permanent. So now it's an attraction.
Oh, it's like a permanent thing.
Yeah, but yeah. So
here I am thinking you're telling me a story of this amazing man in the 1920s, and you lied. Like, what?
Oh, I actually forgot to turn my lights on for over here.
You know what, Mel? Considering the other things we forgot to do in the last 2 hours, I think that's
the lights have come on. Now you know what's happening.
Oh my gosh. Now I know if the lights are off, deceit is ahead.
Deceit's ahead, yeah, for sure. All right, takeaways?
I hate you. So, just kidding, I don't. No, that's insane that at least like mockumentaries, I feel like you know they're mockumentaries because of the sarcasm in it or the way that people are acting, but it's just a film that is false, but to present it as if it's real. Are there any other films like that you can think of?
When he in the documentary, no, I'm sorry, in the show notes they'll have a link to another discussion where they did a YouTube video discussing it, and they were talking about old mockumentaries. I think that's how they were made, was they were made to sound real, and they're not, versus, you know, the Taika Waititis of the world who make, you know, What We Do in the Shadows, which, you know, is in a documentary style, but it's, you know, like, and then obviously we have The Office now where everything kind of is taken way out of context. But I think originally that's how these were done.
Like the only thing that pops in my head is like the Blair Witch Project and how that was supposed to be, it was filmed as if it was a real occurrence, and yet this was a very staged type production. And obviously they never tell you in that this is not real. Like, but I mean, I'd be hot if I would
be really mad. Yeah.
Watch.
So yeah. I still recommend that you watch it because it is really well done, and it does. It does get it grips you because it is quite interesting. And unfortunately, I watched it knowing that it wasn't real, and that's what you'll be doing, and that's what all of our viewers will be doing, which is why I wanted to tell you the story before. But it's still really well done. It's Peter Jackson. You're not gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
So happy first episode, Marie.
I feel deceived.
Hey, thanks for listening. Research, writing, and editing done by Mel Black. Original music by Caleb Duggar. A special thanks to Marie White. You can find all our sources in our show notes and all of the photos on our Instagram. Username, same pod, different cast. Follow, like, and subscribe for future content.